I feel like that proposal reminds me of the first time you try to say "I love you" to someone. You're you're tiptoeing around it. You want to be the first one to say it, but kind of not. That's how most proposals in the LGBTQ community works. You're gauging that timeline and making sure you pick the right time.
That's the best analogy for what you explained. The feeling of trying to determine who should say I love you first, if you're wondering if they're even going to say it back. Law school teaches you how to argue a certain way. So when we get into an argument, I am able to recall things. I am now arguing from a different podium, from a different platform. And it's nothing against my wife, but she's got no chance against a lawyer. And if you're not aware that you're doing it, you're then lawyering your spouse or your partner, your significant other.
Medicine,
Law, friendship. This is Dr. Long and Lawyer Nik. You're listening to the Medico-Legal Brief.
one doctor, one lawyer, and a whole lot of gray area.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Medico-Legal Brief. I'm with Dr. Long. I'm Lawyer Nik. And as usual, every week we're here talking about medical topics and legal topics and trying to navigate that gray area that exists. If you're new to the podcast, give us a like, give us a follow, subscribe, engage with us, leave a comments. We love comments. And with that, Long, how's it going today?
It's going well. My usual routine here on a Wednesday. I usually play pickleball in the morning and then try to get some house errands done and clean up the house, pick it up since I'm home and there aren't kids running around trashing after I've cleaned it up already. So it's my one day to catch up.
On these days, at least in the last couple months, you had been moonlighting, right? So are you still moonlighting right now?
I still have the opportunity to moonlight, but it's really based on necessity, right? Over the last couple of weeks, they haven't really needed me, so I haven't done it. But we're coming into that flu viral season, so I imagine that more Wednesdays will be coming up where I might be working a little bit more if I need the extra money. We'll see.
Is there a medical understanding, like with tax season, accountants get busy around the time that taxes are due. Do you guys as medical professionals have the same kind of seasons that occur with colds and flus and the preparation for those seasons?
Absolutely. We always ramp up more staff, more paperwork, making sure hours are more available, making sure we have enough tests around. We kind of let it kind of ride on the slimmer side during the summer, but then once we get into the fall season, we know that we're going to need a lot more over the next 4 to 5 months. How about you?
We are still taking care of the nursery. I have been painting like a fiend, looking back at how many coats I need, trying to make sure I don't spill on baseboards or carpet. Granted, after painting, I will have to take a carpet cleaner through there to make sure that everything is fresh. My wife is nesting mode, complete nesting mode. She is organizing and cleaning and scrubbing and telling me exactly where she wants things. And then 3 minutes later, she says, I don't like it, move it over here. We're in full-blown nesting mode on our side. I'm pretty sure that after we get done with our podcast today, I have to go back into the room. And the thing is, she can't really help me. I don't want her in there around paint fumes. I don't want her with a paintbrush going at the wall. So I'm kind of all by myself in there. But it's nice because I get to just put on some music or put on a podcast and give it a listen while I try to get some stuff done. She's making a baby. It's the least I can.
And actually, by the time this episode gets posted, you might already be a new father. So we might have to do like a bonus episode or something. Who knows?
Exactly, because I think that's one of the scary things about the pregnancy is, and we didn't know this until we talked to the OB, you get a due date and then the baby can come a few days after that due date, but that baby can come 3 or 4 weeks before the due date. So then it comes with the prep of you better have that bassinet ready and you better have your car seat already situated in the car. You better have your stroller available. You better have this, that, and the other ready to go. That's terrifying. That's absolutely terrifying. So now that we're kind of in that mode, we're in this stressed position to get it all done. That way we can relax when that month comes and we don't have to really worry about what happens if baby comes.
Doesn't matter how much you prepare, you're still going to be stressed out. I'm just letting you know that from experience. My firstborn, my son, was surrogacy, and he came 4 weeks early, not expected at all. Everything went well, but we actually missed the delivery because it was so last minute. And then our daughter, we didn't actually know she was coming. She was an adoption. We didn't know she was coming until 2 weeks before she was to be delivered. You drop everything and you just make it happen. You go with flow. Try to be as relaxed and chill as possible. But it kind of leads into our conversation today, though. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. We have a pretty interesting topic. And part of raising children is finding the appropriate partner to raise those children with. It's definitely a good segue to what we want to discuss today.
I do think it is a very good topic. It is a topic that a lot of professionals think about and worry about as they move through their education because we are so driven by our academics and our career goals that sometimes we put finding that partner off to the wayside since we forget about it, or sometimes we just don't put as much priority, even though it's such a big part of our lives, especially once you've graduated and you've reached your career goal.
This is a good time to reveal the topic. Today, we're going to be talking about marriage and dating while you're going through your schooling, at least your professional schooling, into the actual career. And how do you balance that against achieving your professional goals? How do you balance that against studying? How do you balance that against internships and learning, or even mentoring yourself? And just how do you find the right partner for that situation? So, Long, if you don't mind me asking, what was your dating life like in med school?
Non-existent. I mean, to be completely honest. So for medical school, it is a 4-year journey, and you are literally supposed to study 24/7 because otherwise you just don't have enough time to study for everything that you're supposed to. So even if you did truly study 24/7, you're only probably still going to get maybe 80% of the actual medical knowledge that you need to know. And it's not realistic to be studying 24/7. So the amount of time that we have extra to go hang out, to go eat, to go try to date is very minimal. A lot of the lucky ones who come into medical school who are partnered up, they struggle as well because it is, again, a big time commitment that you're devoting to just studying alone. And so sometimes you don't choose to forget your partner, but your partner may feel left on the side because of that.
I actually went into law school dating somebody. So my first couple of months in law school was pretty unique because it was exactly that. The expectation was that you study and you go to class and then you study some more. And even when you're sleeping, you should be studying. And having a partner that was not in that world, having a girlfriend who did not understand exactly what I was going through when even I really didn't understand what I was going through was extremely difficult. And I would be remiss to say that my law school, or at least my first semester of law school, directly contribute to us splitting up. That had an impact on us being together just because of the dynamics of stress and stress management. And when you're in secondary education, the post-grad education, you are usually pretty young. I mean, there's still some individuals out there that are older when they enter into law school or med school, but I'd say a majority of the time you're coming right out of college, so you're still 22, 23, 21 at some point, and you're trying to figure out how to not only deal with law school or med school or grad school, but also you're still a kid. Like you're still trying to find your way throughout life and find your way as an adult, which then adds the additional stress.
Of course, this is just our own experience, a discussion between how we went through medical school and law school. And we're not giving any sort of dating or marriage advice. It is just a conversation to have, things to think about if you're planning on going into law and medicine and how that may affect how you may build your life or build your marriage. And hopefully we give you good ideas. And then maybe we give you some ideas on things to avoid or things that we did poorly. Maybe you should avoid that. Hopefully it will heed some positives as well as give you some things to know not to do.
To that point, Long, here in Fort Worth, and I think they actually appear throughout the nation, but we have Kiss FM, and in the morning we have Kid Craddock Show, and they do that segment, Love Letters to Kelly. Maybe we should have Love Letters to Dr. Long. And that way he could just give advice and let everybody know how ridiculous they sound when they send you, an email that says, should I break up with my spouse? Should I break up with my boyfriend? Should I quit medical school right now? I think that might be a good segment.
Right? If we have interest, I would not mind doing that.
Uh-huh.
So for med school, I mean, you had asked me what I did. I mean, a lot of it again was studying, school, focusing on the medicine because the goal was to become a doctor. Ancillary to that was trying to find a partner. I was very worried. Again, most professionals or most people who want to become professionals, we worry about what is it going to be like dating as a true professional. Once you become a doctor, are you going to be dating people who are there because of you, or are they there because of your potential income earning? Are they there for other assets, other reasons? And so I knew I wanted to try to find a partner as early as possible. Ideally, I would have found them in college and moved to medical school with them, but that didn't happen. And so a lot of the dating that I experienced was online, a lot of online apps that I utilize. And that's how I found different dates. And unfortunately, at that time, I was in a very small town for medical school. And so I actually had to travel about 45 minutes to an hour to even go on a date.
Oh my gosh. So, and is that to get to like a city center?
To get into a bigger city, yeah, because the town we were in is tiny. It was 15, 20,000 people, and so we're looking to get into more of Portland, Eugene, and those are more of the bigger cities in Oregon.
So you're on those apps, your mileage setting was 50 miles, 50-mile radius.
Oh, yeah. And you would get some doozies. You would get people from other random areas too. And it was always interesting and always fun to have conversations with these people. But it's hard to truly gauge a person's interests as well as commonalities, even though you've written all this profile and you're choosing each other based on what we've written. But we all put our best foot forward on those profiles and we try to highlight certain things and maybe even sometimes exaggerate certain things. And so it was always hard to determine, is this date worth going on, especially when we were so limited in time already? Do I really want to spend an hour, technically 2 hours, driving back and forth, spending a couple hours with this person, and it ended up not turning out to be anything at all?
I can definitely relate. Going into law school, I didn't actually utilize the apps, and we're the same age. You know, the apps are hitting our phones at the same time. But the apps, and again, this was kind of in our tech episode. You are very technologically savvy. I am kind of behind the times when it comes to technology. So I didn't realize what was going on with the dating apps probably as they were coming out. But my approach, at least in the first semester, was I was dating an individual and she was very supportive, but again, it was trying to understand the time commitment and me trying to deal with time management. At that point, that individual has a career. She's a professional because she was a little bit older. She had a job. She was working 9 to 5. And myself, I was trying to make law school my 9 to 5. But law school isn't just a 9 to 5. It feels like a 24/7 sometimes, which to your point with med school, it's like the same thing. Just trying to navigate the time management and trying to find a way to give my studies the appropriate discipline as well as be there for her and be an emotional support, be a good partner, be in a good relationship. It was very, very hard because of all these new stress points that were coming my way. I actually found that a lot of my friends in law school, they had already found their person. So they were getting married or they had been married. Some of them had even had kids already. They were already established and secure in their relationship. To your point, you meet somebody, you're trying to figure out, how do you fit into my future? How do you fit into me going through law school? How do you fit into me going into a profession as a lawyer? How are you going to feel if my offer comes from Austin or Houston and I decide to move? What if it's an offer that takes me across the country? So you're trying to navigate this. Is it worth it to even be with this person knowing that they're already on the fence? And at that point, you're wondering if it's true love. You're wondering if this is for your forever partner. It's a lot easier to stand back and say, you know what, maybe this isn't the time for a relationship. And that's what happened in our relationship. I had to back out of it. She agreed. It was kind of a mutual split. And at that point, it was just kind of dating for fun throughout the rest of law school. And that's where things get interesting because you don't want to hurt anybody. You don't want to lead anybody on, but you're also trying to make your studies and your future the number one priority. And that's hard for people to understand and comprehend at times.
Did you ever find yourself sacrificing study time? You knew that you needed to study that extra 1 or 2 hours, but you know what? I want to go on this date, whether that is to take a break from your studies or maybe this person seemed good enough for you to take that time. Did you ever feel like you sacrificed studies or did studies always was at the forefront for you?
I definitely sacrificed, but I also took the approach in law school that I was not going to be a gunner. I was not going to try to chase the top spot. I wanted to still maintain a social life because I knew if I didn't, I would probably run myself into the ground and probably really end up hating the law and hating law school. So I made sure that my weekends, at least Friday and Saturday, as soon as Friday afternoon hit, it was almost like a job. I would just say, okay, no more law school for this evening. Saturday, no more law school on Saturday, and then hit the books again on Sunday, which is usually a pretty lazy day for me. So I would do my dating on Friday and Saturday, which is pretty normal. But it was those instances throughout the week that impacted trying to grow a partner or try to grow a relationship with a partner, because you start looking at, are you texting each other? Are you calling each other? It's 5 o'clock and I'm in the library studying and they want to go grab a drink for happy hour. And that's where you're trying to make the risk analysis. Is this worth it or is this not worth it? And then based on how they respond, are you going to appreciate the response? Are you going to deal with the response? Or is it going to be such a negative response where you push the other individual away? So I try to maintain a dating life, and I try to be very, very open, especially with me coming from family law, being a former divorce attorney. Communication is really, really important. Communication is the end all be all to a good relationship. I tried to be very upfront once I understood the dynamic of law school as to what the woman I was dating could expect out of me going through this. That helped. But again, I didn't find my wife until mid-30s. So there was a lot of trial and error, no pun intended, a lot of trial and error that occurred.
Is the statistic similar in law school for people who are coupled up and they matriculate into law school? And then how successful are those couples? Do they remain through? But I know for medical school, unfortunately, the number is quite low that a couple will survive medical school because of just how strenuous it is. And again, first 2 years, it's all book work. And then your third, your fourth year, you actually are traveling a lot more. So if you have a wife, kids, husband, and kids, you are not going to be around that much during those last 2 years, even more so.
I'm not sure on the statistic, but if I could use real life case studies, my study group and all my law school family, I call them, were all men. And they all had partners, and all of their wives are probably some of the most strong individuals that I've ever come across, because to this day, they're all still together. They're still thriving. They have beautiful families, beautiful relationships. The support is there. Those relationships were established with all of them prior to law school. They had already built such a solid foundation that this was just part of their journey. This was part of their path. There was maybe rumors, and I don't ever want to put anybody out, of maybe one person ending up divorced in our entire class. I didn't have a relationship with that person, so you just hear through the grapevine, oh, that person might be struggling. But if I had examples in front of me, the guys that I hang out with, and you've met a lot of them, you met them at the wedding, you are a testament. You saw their strong relationships that they have. They just manage it so well. That led to an example of what I should be looking for in a partner and a wife, what I should be looking for as far as finding that strong woman to come in where they could support my career aspirations, hold down the fort, but also pursue the passions that they had themselves. So you
Yeah,
didn't find that in med school. That doesn't really exist, huh?
it exists, of course. You do have a small percentage of people who come in married or girlfriend, boyfriend, and then are successful throughout it. But I would say the majority of them do break up. They try the long distance situation, or the person that is in medical school trying to study just aren't home enough. And so that is a good point to bring up, is there is a lot of sacrifice on both ends, not only as the person going through law school and medical school, realizing that you're going to be missing out on a lot of life things. You're not going to be able to go to all the weddings, all the birthday parties. If you have kids, you're going to be missing a lot of sporting events. But the focus is to try to build that better career, which will give you a better future so that you can be around. That is the hope, anyways. But what I saw in my friends who had wives and husbands that were their counterparts, they had to take on the brunt of the household chores. They had to do the cooking. They had to take care of everything that is not related to schooling. They took care of the rest of it. And so they had to step up. And I don't think very many of them actually had jobs at all. Their only role was to be able to support the person going through school as much as they can. Because again, they are putting all of their eggs in a bucket to make sure that this person is going to make it through medical school and law school successfully, because you've already devoted not only time, but you've put in so much money, you don't really want to fail out.
And if you look at relationships as, and I don't want to dumb it down to this level, but if you look at a relationship as an investment, you and your teammate, you and your partner are investing in the team's future. It's not, as a spouse, I'm investing in Nick's future, I'm investing in Long's future. No, I'm investing in our future, because if Long does well, if Nick does well, we do well. That might be hard for some individuals to understand, especially being so young and trying to form relationships and trying to find yourself and not infringe on your partner, not infringe on your boyfriend or your girlfriend, and not try to take the reins from them. But when you've already established such a solid relationship, it's easy to say, you know what, if I can sacrifice for 3 or 4 years, or in this case with med school, what is it, like 8 years after going through medical school and residency, then you are setting yourself up for, a very, very nice future, not financially, but just a very secure future. You have the finances, you have the benefits, you have a stable career, very established, prestigious career. And even to that point, that also played a role in finding a partner, which we can get to in a second. Did you feel that individuals in med school or even residency, when they were dating, let's say that they came in without a girlfriend or a boyfriend or a partner, did they seek out that in the other students? Because I feel like there were several law students that found each other that ended up formulating a very good relationship and moving forward, ended up being together and having a family and raising kids and so on and so forth. So did that happen in med school?
You actually took the question out of my mouth. I was going to ask you the same thing. Yes, that was very common. Not necessarily finding each other to partner up, but definitely finding each other to relieve whatever stress they needed to relieve. And a percentage of them did successfully turn it into more of a long-term relationship, which was great. Again, this is a cohort of people where you are living through a trauma together. And it's funny to kind of explain it that way, but law school and medical school is so strenuous and so stressful. And you're constantly high anxiety, trying to pass tests, trying to do as best as you can, trying to learn everything, that you are all, however, 100, 200 students, you're all going through it together and you're experiencing the same thing all at the same time. And so you become really close. And so there's a lot of different outlets that we utilize. And yes, a lot of those outlets and a lot of those stresses did push people together. And it was really nice. And thinking back to my class of about 107, I would say that there are probably about 10 to 15 couples that are still together and have kids now.
Just to baseline, how big is a medical school class?
So it can range. My class is much smaller, which is around 100. They usually try to do about 100 to 125 per year. The average class across the nation is more closer to 200 to 300. Depends. If you're going to be in like New York or California, they're going to have bigger cohorts. I was in Oregon, a lot smaller. That's why I chose it, is because then I got to know my classmates so much more, so much better.
That's similar to law school. I think the only difference with law school, it's so established in the sense of you have first year, second year, third year, and then part-time students. So your entire law school could have anywhere to 300 to 500 students only. And that is the people that are there every single day. And then every time, a class comes out, another class comes in. So it's very small and very community. It feels like a family. And to your point about trauma, yes, you are going through trauma. There are many days that we would go into the study room and there'd be 6, 7, 8 of us, and the complaining would commence, the frustration would come out, and you helped calm each other down. You leaned on each other for studying and tips and what's working. And to your point about finding a partner, if you can find the right partner, they're going through it with you. It's just like when people find each other at work or people find each other during a hobby. It's you are doing something every single day, so the people around you doing that exact same thing become some of your closest confidants.
So did you end up dating any of your classmates or any of your law student colleagues?
I would say that I dated casually one individual when I was a 3L and she was a 1L. And it was just kind of a very casual thing. And I was getting ready to graduate. I didn't know what my future had in store for me. And I also I try to stay to the point of, what's the old saying? Like, you don't shit where you eat. Like, I tried to avoid that because law school is already dramatic enough. I was trying to avoid having the drama of walking through the school, having somebody I had dated or broken up with right down the hall, having to sit next to them in class. And I've learned in the future, especially with people I've dated at work or in communities, it's drama. It's drama filled. You don't want that there. So I try to avoid that. and I tried to avoid it there. But I had met somebody, and she had piqued my interest, and granted, nothing came of it. I don't even think we went on a solidified date. It's kind of like, hey, we'd run into each other at the bars or meet up at the bars, but that was pretty much it. What about you? I know at the beginning you said there was no dating life, but were you able to date anybody like consistently?
So I did date some of the lower. I tried not to date in the class because, like you said, saw each other all the time. But I did date a couple of people that were younger in the lower classes. But my journey was a little bit more interesting because I actually I don't want to well I don't want to say I was exploring, but I was discovering my sexuality in med school, which is the worst time I feel like you should be doing that. I felt like if I could have done that in college, it would have saved me so much headache and so much time. But I did really well my first year. And then second year, it was the whole year. I struggled so much. It was because I was so focused on, I don't know, am I dating men? Am I dating women? I was dating both at the same time. I was trying to explore both at the same time. And so I was devoting so much time on the apps to try to find what am I interested in. I'm just a little confused at what was going on. But yes, I dated in class. It only lasted a couple months, not even that long. Because again, we all have our own studies that we needed to do. I had a little bit more time because I had gotten through first year already. She was getting through her first year, so she really had to put a lot of barriers to make sure that she had time to study for herself too. So that fizzled out. I mean, it wasn't anything dramatic at all. Once I got to third year, that was really when I got the opportunity, because then now I was traveling to other cities so that I could do my rotations. I had the opportunity to explore more, to date more. And that was when I found my husband. It was a dating app, but at least I found him during my third year.
Which helps. When you find your person, life gets so much easier. I mean, granted, you have different struggles from building a relationship, but the fact that you then find security in yourself, like if I was to go back and date right now, I don't even know where to start. I have no clue where to start. It was hard enough when I was doing it, and nowadays being removed from it, I pity the people that are still trying to date because
It's intimidating. There's just so much out there, but then there's also so much expectation for how you should act and how much you should give, and is it 50-50? It's just so much to expect out of a relationship these days. I'm glad I found my person that understands me and has put up with me now for 9-10 years of marriage and 11-12 years of being together. Our biggest struggle is that we both had just gotten out of relationships. We were supposed to be casual. It wasn't supposed to be anything serious, but we turned it into something serious because we actually moved in together within a month of knowing each other. We were thrown right into it. We quickly learned how each other argued, and we couldn't be further on the opposite sides of the spectrum on how we argued. I liked resolution right away. I wanted to make sure that we went to bed happy and not go to bed angry. He was very much, leave me alone, give me time to process. It took a lot of time and a lot of stress to figure that out. I'm glad we got to go through that journey, and I'm glad we survived that journey. It's a very important thing in finding that partner is you need to have those fights, because I feel like there are some couples out there who will tell you we never fight. Then how are you ever testing your relationship to make sure that it can survive those stressors?
I completely agree. And it's having patience with your partner having patience with you, because there have been some relationships that I've been in or I've seen personally on both sides where you're squeezing the relationship so tight or trying to force something that's not there that you end up killing the relationship anyways. Or the other person is doing it to you and you say, hey, like back up. You're giving too much. I remember there was a woman my third year, and we had been friends forever, and she's a great individual, great person. And I thought that we might have a dating situation that would occur, and we start talking and we're trying to establish that relationship outside of a friendship, and we're starting to build something. And then law school finals hit, and I completely tapped out, and she got extremely mad at me. And would there have been a future there? Maybe. But my mental state right now was, nope, law school is number one. I've invested 3 years in this. I don't care. I don't care enough. And so that was the last time we ever spoke. She went on to have her own family, her own kids, and that was her path. I met the person I'm supposed to be with, so that was the right decision in retrospect. And it's the communication, it's the patience, and you look at your relationships, you're like, there are so many times where we could have just called it quits. My wife and I are very similar to you guys, and we moved in together super fast. It was within maybe 4 or 5 months that we were finally there. And at that point, we had fights. We had been together almost every single day, but we had our fights. We had our tiffs. We had our growing pains. And one thing that always stood out to me, at least from family law, is the establishment of trying to determine, is this a roommate fight or is this a love fight? Do not let your love fights impact your roommate fights, and do not let your roommate fights impact your love fights. And what I mean by that is, if your boyfriend or girlfriend or your husband or wife or whoever decides that they are not going to do dishes for the day, don't look at that and say, well, they don't love me because they didn't do dishes. That's just a roommate issue. The leaving the clothes on the floor is a roommate issue. The not taking the trash out is a roommate issue. Don't let that impact the love. But at the same time, don't let the love impact the roommate issue, where you're saying this person's really hurt me from a love perspective, from a partner perspective. So now I'm going to be shitty to them and not take out the trash, or I'm not going to do the dishes. I'm not going to do the normal day to day. Because those two things can really like create havoc. Just general advice, but to bring it back to school, and I think that this is advice or perspective for the people that are still in school before we move on to the careers. Did you find that the women that were in med school, it was harder to date for them? And I ask because I felt like some of the women in law school, they were trying to date their professional equals, because a lot of men outside of law school, or who hadn't gotten that grad school prestige, they were intimidated by the future lawyers that were women. If you were a woman and you were trying to be a lawyer and you were doing really well, it was harder for them to date, because a lot of men they felt, I don't know, emasculated, intimidated, what have you, by dealing with somebody who was on such a prestigious journey. So did the females in your med school have the same instance with trying to date outside of med school?
Again, I have not interviewed every single female in my class, so I can't tell you exactly. But from what I see, I feel like we all kind of struggled similarly, just finding a partner that we felt could join us on the journey. Because again, we had only just started out. Medical school is only the beginning of the journey. And so there's so much more years to commit to the relationship that no matter if you were male or female, you were going to struggle to find that partner. And so I can't say that females had it harder, because it was equal. However, I will say that I do think that females have it harder to become a professional if they are trying to have kids, already have kids, have a husband, because society almost expects that not only are you going to do your professional life, but you also have to be able to come home and take care of your personal life. Of course, I saw some great husbands and partners out there that took in that role, that take on that role as the homemaker, and they did an amazing job. But I also saw a couple of relationships where she would study all day at school and then come home and actually have to breastfeed their kid, do the laundry, cook the meal for the next day. Like, that's a lot to ask. What blows my mind are the women who not only did they study hard, do well in school, but they decided to have a kid in the middle of those 4 years, sometimes even have two kids. I felt like I was struggling, and I was just wading through water just to try to get through classes and get through my 4 years. And these women made it look so easy, and they were pregnant. They were creating another human being inside them. So I commend a lot of my women colleagues, and I love that they're here on the journey with me, and they become great doctors and become great mothers and partners. And so that is the one thing I do want to point out, is it is a bigger expectation and a larger struggle. I do see that for women when they enter into the professional world, whether it is a physician, a lawyer, or any higher education. The expectations there are a little bit higher than I feel a man would deal with, because it's kind of expected in a man.
And we have some of those women in our direct social circle that we've been friends with forever. And they have either established families, or they are on the brink of establishing a family, and they are really successful in what they have done in their professional career and their education career. And when we're talking to them, it's kind of wild to think that we've gone through the same thing, but the raising kids, the pregnancy, the societal demands of that as well, like they're going through all of it. I mean, I'm looking at my wife going through her pregnancy. I'm like, I could never, I could absolutely never. So to do all that together is, oh my gosh, the most respect. You guys know who you are. We hold you guys in high esteem, just FYI.
Absolutely. I have a question for you, though. Did you find that any of your relationships ended up with any sort of ultimatum that could have ended it or continued the relationship? Was there ever an argument or discussion had where this was it? Like, this is the split in the road. We're either going together or not going together at all. Because you kind of mentioned that you had that kind of issue where you were dating someone, but then you had to focus it in your school. But did you have that discussion with them, or did it kind of just fizzle out naturally?
Once I found myself in law school and understood what law school needed from me to be successful, I was able to communicate exactly what it would be like dating me. So I was very clear on I have to study. This is when finals are. These are the internships I'm pursuing. This is what I plan on doing afterwards. The women I had dated respected that communication and respected that honesty. So I was never given an ultimatum, nor did I ever give an ultimatum. There was never a position of, you need to stop being a lawyer or you need to drop out of law school. I was never put in that position. Things would just fizzle out. Things would just naturally come to an end where we both recognized that things didn't work. I did my best in my dating career to try not to ghost people. I tried to give people the respect of telling them why we could no longer see each other or why I wasn't feeling the relationship. And most women were receptive to that. I had a few that I got a tongue lashing from, which fair, each their own. It was never an ultimatum. When I got into my career, there was never an ultimatum with my career. I feel like most people respected what I was doing and my path, but that also came with setting the boundaries and the expectations of what I was looking for. And also asking that in return, understanding if I was taking a woman on a date, what is it that you're looking for? What is it that you want to achieve? Are you wanting to go work for NASA and go to the moon, or are you wanting to be a stay-at-home wife? What is it that you want out of life? And then seeing if that matched up with what I wanted out of life. But we both can agree that life throws curveballs at you. So things get weird and things get topsy-turvy. Same question to you. Were you ever given an ultimatum regarding your education or your career?
I was never given an ultimatum, but I feel like I might have given my husband an ultimatum
Okay.
because again, we met beginning of my third year. So I knew that I had to do rotations away. We only got to see each other so often of that first year of dating. And then my fourth year, I had done majority of my rotations on the East Coast. So completely on the opposite side of the country. And I told him, you know what? I'm planning on doing residency on the East Coast for sure. I don't plan on staying on the West Coast at all. And so you have to understand that about me. So if this is going to turn into anything bigger, and if I were to ever propose to you, I will be the one to propose to you, and it will be after we know where I'm going to land. That way you can make the most educated decision possible. And so I said it again, like you, very communicative. I made sure that he understood all of my thought processes and my future goals, laid it all out there, and just let him decide what he wanted to do. Well, he really did decide what he wanted to do on his own without my input because he surprised me with a proposal, even though I told him I wanted to be the one to propose. But he proposed to me before we found out where I was going to match into residency. So he was telling me that he was committing to me no matter where we were going to go and that he was going to leave his hometown. He's going to leave his family and friends and move across the country with me no matter where we went. And so that really solidified, obviously, our marriage, our relationship. And and then ever since then, no matter what argument we had, we knew that we were always going to find ourselves back together. That is one of the most important things about a marriage is that when you decide that, you truly have to decide it. You have to make sure that you understand that through the thick and thin, worst and best, sick and happiness, all of that, healthiest, worst of times, best of times. Like you have to make sure that you are committing for all of those different reasons because you are going to have so many ups and downs throughout the relationship. Hopefully, more ups than downs. But that was really that one sign or that one gesture that he did for me that I felt really solidified. And of course, I was just coming out. He was only the second guy I had very really dated in terms of being a male. So it was all different and unique to me. And I was happy he did it. I was angry that he didn't let me propose, but it is what it is.
Okay, I have a question for you. So, in the LGBTQ community, is there a societal standard on who should propose to who first? Obviously, with hetero relationships, it's usually the man's going to propose to the woman and then you're off to the races. But for that community, is it different? Like, what's the standard?
No, it's just whoever gets to it first. That's why I laid out my timeline. I told him exactly this is when, if it's gonna happen, this is gonna be around the time that I would propose if we're gonna do it. And he wanted to throw a wrench in my plans because that's what he likes to do, is he's a spontaneous guy and he likes to make things more fun and exciting. And so he did it, and here we are now, like I said, 9, 10 years later, being married.
So what if you and your partner are both of the nature that you want to be proposed to? Somebody has to give in. Somebody has to cross that
Correct.
line and say, I'll do it.
Someone will eventually. Again, there's actually, I feel like there's more of a dual proposal. Someone will propose, and then the other person will be like, well, I had a plan too. So I eventually want to propose too. And so then they do a second proposal. I've seen a lot of those.
I used to joke with my wife when I propose. I'm like, "Hey, I need a proposal. I need something akin to an engagement ring. Like, can I get a car or autographed Texas football jersey or something? Like, can I get something cool?" That's I like the way you explained that, because I just never really thought about it. Is how do you determine who, like, outside of societal norms, like who's calling that shot first, who's getting on their knee first? So the fact that you're like, it's a race to see who does it, it's very, very entertaining, to say the least, because especially as a divorce attorney and hearing everybody's story about how they came together, there's so many different funny stories that could happen where, to your point, well, I was going to propose, but then he beat me to it, or she did this, and then all of a sudden I turned around and I had a ring as well, and just a bunch of different love stories that can exist there.
I feel like that proposal reminds me of the first time you try to say "I love you" to someone. You're you're tiptoeing around it. You want to be the first one to say it, but kind of not. I feel like that's how our proposal, and I feel like that's how most proposals in the LGBTQ community works. Is that you're trying to make sure that they're going to say yes. You obviously don't want to propose and then they say no, and so you're gauging that timeline and making sure you pick the right time.
That's the best analogy for what you explain. The feeling of trying to determine who should say I love you first, who doesn't want to say it first, if you're wondering if they're even going to say it back. That's a pretty solid analogy. I do have a segue question for you. All right, we've been talking a lot about what happened during school, but going into your professional career as a doctor, you're already married. You guys hadn't had kids yet, right? I know that residency into actually being full-fledged doctor doing your own thing, like, can be a little bit weird on the timeline. What did that look like for you?
So we got married. We did a elopement. So we just went to the court, and we just, with our best friends there, or close friends there, and we just signed papers, and that was it. We didn't have family members there or a big party at all. So we made it official. And then I had to go move cross country. We moved together, and I did 3 years of residency. We were trying to have kids during that time. We did a lot of foster. We were trying to foster to adopt. We actually had fostered a 5-year-old foster child at that time that unfortunately didn't pan out. But once I graduated a residency, then we had to move again for my attending job, or my actual big boy job. And so that's when we moved again to Wisconsin. And that's when we officially did our surrogacy and our adoption.
Now you've entered a new realm of establishing your career. You have your husband, you're looking at kids. What were the stresses and the pressures that you were facing, knowing that you had to still work hard, because doctors work freaking hard, but at the same time, make sure you were there for your relationship, for your family, so on and so forth?
Well, we definitely made sure that any extra time we had free, that we spent it on each other, and that we traveled, we ate out, we enjoyed our, I don't want to say single life, but our child free life, because we knew the expectations and the responsibilities that would come once a kid comes. And so we wanted to make sure we lived it up those couple of years, although it was limited because the salary of a resident is fairly minimal. We're still living pretty much on student debt, and the time commitment is also a lot. You are spending typically 40 to 60, if not 80 hours per week at the hospital, or at least doing medicine in some sort, whether that's charting, reading, keeping up with the knowledge. And so we had that discussion similarly to when we were in medical school, about these are the expectations of my work requirements now. These are the times that we have for each other. We always plan way, way ahead. I was one of those, again, just like I do now. I try to plan a year in advance. So I try to plan those trips, those date nights. I try to plan it all ahead so that we are all on the same page, and that nothing, well, hopefully nothing can interrupt those things. We try to set it in stone as much as we can. And so that really helped us get through those next 3 years. Although I will say it really is wonderful when you actually love the residency class that you are working with, because again, more trauma. So not only trauma of medical school, but now you're going through the trauma of residency and all the stress there, sleepless nights, on-call nights. And so your spouses hang out with other spouses and you're hanging out with the other residents. And so you find that commonality. So it was really nice to be able to come together and do all that together. But very similarly to medical school, you see a lot of couples come into residency and then end up breaking up after that. Again, I don't know why it is in medicine, but the numbers for divorce are much higher than it should be.
You had discussed a lot of that in our PTO podcast. So if you wanted more information on how doctors take PTO and vacation time, it's a good one to tune into. But Long, I can't exactly mirror that sentiment, at least from a lawyer point of view, because when I got into practice, especially in family law and litigation, it was very, very hard to know what I was doing on a daily basis. So me trying to date during that time was extremely difficult. I had a lot of the prestige as far as being a lawyer in my dating, where women wanted to date me, or there's also the thing that they didn't want to date me, which I'll get into that in a second. But they wanted to date me because being able to go through law school, being a lawyer was an established, secure career. So they knew that I had a job. They knew that I was successful, that I'd gone through schooling. So there was a lot of like pros on my checklist for people wanting to date me. At the same time, it was very hard for me because I can be as communicative as I want. But if all of a sudden a trial or a hearing popped up, I might be canceling on that individual for a date that night. I might have to spend a Friday, a Saturday, or Sunday doing lawyer work instead of actually seeing them. And I thought that the way, in retrospect, the way I dated throughout my career as a lawyer, at least initially, it wasn't fair to a lot of the women I dated because of how much I had to jump around and the inconsistency that I had. The relationships that worked best for me were the more casual relationships where the woman wasn't expecting a lot out of me. I wasn't expecting a lot out of them, and we were able to come together and have fun date nights and not dive too into like what does our future bring. And then that led to, into a longer term relationship. And that's where I was trying to find myself in my future. I was done with being a lawyer. I wanted to transition into something different, and that adds um, its own confusion and its own trials and tribulations. Because when you're switching careers after being established in a career, your partner says, "Wait, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? You had security, and now you're turning it on its head." Thankfully, my wife now, she understands it's part of my personality, and she's all aboard. She'll support me 150% no matter what I do, and that's why I love her. But back in the day, that wasn't always the case. For any of those lawyers out there that are, if you're trying to date a lawyer, or if you're a lawyer trying to date somebody who's not a lawyer, because lawyer to lawyer, they understand. It's really easy for lawyers to come together because they understand what you're going through, and there's an appreciation there. But if you're trying to date outside of the legal community, it gets hard because of the expectations. You're not always around. You're working 50, 60, 70 hours a week. You have things pop up. You have that sorry, I can't go to date night tonight because I have to read a briefing and it needs to be submitted to the court first thing in the morning. I just can't. That's something to consider for anybody as a lawyer still dating. It's hard. It's hard out there. And then again, discuss with social media and the apps, it gets even harder. I transitioned to using the apps because of convenience. I wasn't out and about meeting people. It was hard to get to festivals or get to concerts or even go out to the bar sometimes because of the demand of the legal work. And so I relied on the apps, and I would get judgment from women because I was a lawyer. I would get, in communicating, it's like, I'm not going to date a lawyer. I'm not going to do that to my life. And that made things hard. And there were some instances where I would try not to even talk about it because I knew that it might be a check against me. And that's what I mean from a few minutes ago of there were people that didn't want to date me for that specific reason, because there's preconceived notions, there's stereotypes about lawyers. And I guess I fit in those stereotypes, which, as we talked about in our political podcast, like, don't put people into stereotypes. Try not to, because everybody's different.
What it sounds like you're saying is that the lawyer title can sometimes hurt you. But if you look back and you truly look back at your experiences, do you feel like in the grand scheme of things, it hurt you more, or did it help you more being a lawyer? Like, truly think about having that title. Or maybe we should call your wife in and ask if that big. made a big deal or not?
Oh, please don't. Please don't call my wife in. She'll give you an earful about it. So two different dynamics. As a divorce lawyer specifically, I came to appreciate the fact that a relationship not built on a solid foundation and not based on communication could be ran into the ground really easy. A lot of people can interfere with relationships. A lot of people, I mean, cheating is a thing. It is a thing. Emotional cheating, physical cheating, cheating is a thing. Infidelity is a thing. You throw kids in the dynamic, it gets even worse. So being able to build a strong foundation and being able to communicate your ideals and your beliefs and your expectations. And you don't even have to agree with your partner. You just have to be able to put them out there to be received and then give your input and feedback back and forth. So as a divorce attorney, I saw a lot of these relationships, they weren't doing that, which is what led them to get divorced. So everything that seemed important during these cases became very trivial to me, like arguing over who gets the lamp, arguing over who is driving, arguing over the late night phone call. Like it just, things became trivial. If we have a problem, let's just talk and work it out. It can be solved. We can find a solution. And if we can't, then maybe we're not meant to be together and we're saving ourselves a lot of heartache and time invested in each other. So a lot of people would ask me, well, you're a divorce attorney. Does that mean you don't want to get married? Absolutely not. It actually like encouraged me more to get married because I knew what I should be looking for out of a partner. Now, the second part of that is the one thing that has not hurt me in relationships, but has added difficulty is the whole don't lawyer me when I'm in arguments with my current wife or past people that I've dated. Because law school teaches you how to argue a certain way. And I am very logical. I'm very point A, point B, point C. Lawyers also have fantastic memories. So I can recall exactly what you said 3 weeks ago at 3:33 in the afternoon. So I use all that and I don't realize that I'm doing it. So when we get into an argument, I am able to recall things. I am now arguing from a different podium, from a different platform. And it's nothing against my wife because she's a very smart individual. She's a very successful individual. She knows her stuff, but she's got no chance against a lawyer. I'm sorry. You put any lawyer across the room with her, we're going to make you say things that we want you to say. We're going to back you into corners. We're going to find a way to, we're not lying. We're not twisting anything, but we're going to kind of manipulate and persuade at times. And if you're not aware that you're doing it, you're then lawyering your spouse or your partner, your significant other. And that was the one thing I think hurt a lot of relationships. I needed to recognize when I was doing that and bring myself back down out of lawyer mode to then communicate on the same plateau. Because if I was trying to communicate from the higher plateau of my legal justification, I was just steamrolling her. And I was steamrolling from a point of, you're just my competition. You're the opposing counsel in court. I'm gonna win this argument. And a lot of times it's not about winning. It's about communicating and finding collaboration, I should say. And you were shaking your head and laughing a lot of the times during that. What's your insight on that? What's your input on that?
My input is that you may win the argument, but if it were to come down to a trial and jury, she would win. Come on. Your wife would always win, hands down. She's way
Probably.
cuter. But with that, I mean, you're talking about divorces, you're talking about what you've experienced, and now we've kind of come around to talking about marriages. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on prenuptials, postnuptials, and you as a lawyer, what you see the differences are, when they should be utilized, should they be utilized at all?
So a prenuptial agreement or a premarital agreement is any agreement that you get into with your spouse before you get married. So basically, right to contract, you guys are kind of contracting what's going to happen in your marriage, and it goes into effect the date you guys get married. Postnuptial agreement is you guys have already gotten married. You might be 3 days in, 3 years in, or 30 years in. You are reaching an agreement as to what happens if you guys are ever to get a divorce or a separation, so on and so forth. I know that with prenups and postnups, there's also this kind of ancillary position of having a will or a trust and how that impacts on the death of another. And that can play its own role. Everybody should have a will. I'm a firm believer in that. But as far as a postnup prenup, there's different dynamics as to why you would want one. I think from a logical business-esque perspective, like everybody would want a prenup because it's the what if. And as a lawyer, we are trying to minimize your risk. From a romanticized position, people say, I'm getting married to my person. I'm getting married to my forever partner. I do not expect to divorce them. Not one bit. I don't expect anything to happen. I love and trust this person. But then when it gets down to it, the stats are like 50 or 60% of marriages end in divorce. So the only times a marriage ends legitimately is divorce or death. So if you have a will, you're covering death. If you are getting divorced, you want that prenup or that postnup. Most of the times what you're seeing from a premarital agreement or a prenuptial agreement is, and I'm not trying to stereotype, I'm not trying to give statistics, but you'll see people that have either a lot of assets and they want to protect those assets, maybe from a concern that the other individual is not being forthcoming in the relationship. So if you are a high wealth individual, you might want to make sure that upon divorce, your spouse is not going to try to take all your money, because maybe that is the reason why they are with you. You also have individuals that would like a prenup or a postnup because they are coming from a previous divorce. And based on experience, this might be their second or third marriage, they don't believe in love anymore, at least that romanticized version of love. And they want to protect themselves in case another divorce is going to happen. Or they may have kids from a previous marriage and they want to make sure that assets are protected in a certain manner to then ensure that even if they get a divorce in this next marriage, it's not going to negatively impact their kids from the previous marriage. And then, you have moral and philosophical viewpoints on it. I heard one individual say, and this was the best call for prenups and premarital agreements. It is, if you are to get divorced, you are allowing the state or the judge to determine what's going to happen to your assets. You then have to adhere to whatever the law of your state is. And in some instances, a jury, in some instances, a judge. But if you were to do a prenup or a premarital, you are controlling that. You are deciding this may never happen, but if it does, here is how we as a partnership would like to handle it. We're not going to leave it in the hands of some third party that doesn't know us, that doesn't know our relationship, that doesn't know our history. We are actually just going to decide on what happens from that instance. Any questions on that, Long? That was a very good question. I appreciate that question. But it's a lot to
actually,
unwind.
and I do have a lot more questions revolving the details of it, but I actually want to throw this to the audience and the viewers. If you are interested in hearing more about prenups, postnups, wills, living wills, and just like the legal as well as the medical side of that, please leave a comment down below and maybe we'll make a full episode so that we can dive deeper into it. But I have a personal question for you on whether or not you personally have a prenuptial with your wife. You don't
I
have
do
to
not.
answer. Okay.
And the reason, no, I do not have a prenup. I do not have a postnup. I do not have any sort of agreement. And there's a few reasons for that. And again, it's moral, philosophical. Like, she's my forever partner. I don't see myself leaving her. I don't see her leaving me. Granted, anything could happen in life, but I truly believe that she is my soulmate. Now, as corny as that sounds, I just gave you guys the lawyer viewpoint of protecting your assets and protecting yourself. So Texas is a community property state. And I believe Wisconsin is also a community property state where you're at.
No idea.
I think it is. But what a community property state means is that everything that you had prior to the marriage is yours. Everything that they had prior to the marriage is theirs. So everything that you guys built together or you got while you were married, whether that's income, with a few exceptions, but whether you guys go buy a house, whether you buy a car together, when you bring in the income, that's all to be shared as community property. There's a few exceptions while you are married. If you get anything by death, devise, or descent. So if you're gifted something, if you got something because somebody passed away, you got something from a will, or if you had a personal injury case where maybe you were harmed and you got an award there, then that is considered separate property. But the court presumes that everything is community property until you start breaking it up. Well, and my wife knows this. I've had this conversation. This house, I bought the house before we were married. I was here long before we ever got together. Well, it's my own separate property. If we were to get divorced, it is mine. I have nothing to worry about that. And outside of any other assets, like, this is my only asset that I have. I have some savings. I have some instance of the 401k that would need to get split out. But for the most part, like, I'm not really worried about the assets because I truly believe that what we've built together as a marriage, that if we had to divvy that out, that we would be able to find an equitable way of determining who gets what. God forbid that ever happens. So if I had billions of dollars in assets and properties all over the place or businesses all over the place, I might have had a different approach to it. But I really didn't. I didn't have a lot. Like I didn't have a lot of assets built up that I felt like I needed to protect. So I'm of the nature of fairness. If we get a divorce and then I'm also a cause of that. So I need to be prepared to find an equitable solution with this individual I promised to be with for the rest of my life, if it came down to that. I know that that seems weird that I'm sitting here saying, yeah, prenups and premaritals are great and postnups are good. Like you can protect yourself from the business perspective, but I didn't have one. And I'm okay with that. I am genuinely okay with that. The day comes, I will deal with that because that's a decision I made. I will hold myself accountable, and I don't think it'll ever come. Knock on wood, I don't think it'll ever come. But if it ever does, I'll figure it out at that point. Can I ask you the same question?
Absolutely. No prenup at all. But I knew that no matter who or when I was going to get married, I knew that from a very young age that that was not something that I was interested in. I do feel like it can muddy the waters or be a stain in the relationship that you're always thinking, okay, this is so contractual. They're already betting almost against the relationship. And I know that that's not always the case. And that's why I say prenup, postnup is very much a personal decision with you and your partner. And so that discussion needs to be had. And if you both agree, great. With myself and my husband, I mean, he met me when I had $350,000 in debt, of student debt. So there was no assets. He wasn't getting anything out of me at all. So whatever we built up after that, it was because we built it up together. So there's no way I would have wanted to keep all of that to myself. Like you said, equality and equitability. So I wanted to make sure that no matter what happens, whether I die, whether we do fall apart, he should get his share because he put as much sacrifice and time into our relationship and our family unit as I did. And so we ultimately did not do a prenup, and I don't feel like we need to do a postnup either.
We are on the exact same page about that because it's what we built together. We are building this together. You and I have both come from nothing and built up amazing careers and have utilized our education and an amazing network and just good friends. Like we're in it together. I would not, if I had any doubt into her ability to be a loyal, supportive partner, I wouldn't have gotten married to her. And like I said, I found her later in life. So I had already been through the gambit of the lying, the cheating, the deception, the dating somebody for the wrong reason. Like I'd already experienced all that. So when I did find her, it was just, she was everything. It was perfect. So whatever we're building from this point on, I want to make sure that if that day ever tragically came, she's still entitled to the sacrifice that she made to be with me, just like I'm entitled to the sacrifice I made with her. And then I'll just hire a great divorce attorney because I know them all. She may not like that joke.
She's not, definitely not. You're going to get an earful. We're nearing the end of our episode. I kind of want to end on a positive note. So if you have one piece of advice for whether that's dating, relationships, marriage, what is it? And make it quick.
My piece of advice is to separate the love fights from the roommate fights and communicate with your partner, communicate about everything, whether it's your politics, whether it's your sexual preferences, whether it's what type of food you want. Communicate. You guys cannot read each other's minds, and you should not expect your partner to read your mind. The only way that you guys are going to make it through life is by communicating and being open and honest about absolutely everything. And that's not to like the white lies, right? It's okay to white lie sometimes. Like it's okay. Your wife comes out and she says, "Do I look pretty?" And you guys are running late. "Yes, you look great. Let's get out the door. We got to go right now." But again, she might not like that joke.
You're digging yourself
communicate.
a hole here. My piece of
What about you?
advice. My piece of advice is to make sure you carve time out for each other, whether that is going through law school, medical school, when you're out and you're doing your big boy job and big girl job, you find time for each other. But more importantly, carve out time for yourselves to do your own hobbies. Because the one thing about marriage is that everyone sees you as a unit and as a couple, sometimes lose who you are. And therefore, you got to find time for yourself so that you can maintain that independence. It's great that you always want to be with your partner, but there will be days and times where you need alone time. And if you don't have a hobby or you don't have another group of friends that you can lean on, it can be really lonely and can be really difficult. So that is the one advice I would have for anyone going into a relationship, definitely for anyone that is going into medicine or law and is in the thick of it, that you find time for your partner, but you also need to find time for yourself.
So to Long's point, if you can love yourself, it's important, love yourself, and then it gives you the ability to love others. And if you can do that throughout the course of your relationship, you can still maintain just a healthy, good relationship.
With that, this will end our episode here on the Medical Legal Brief. If you like what you heard, I want you guys to share it, like it, leave a comment, interact with us. We love to interact with you guys. And if you have any new topics or new ideas that you want us to speak about, please let us know about it. Again, this is Dr. Long and Lawyer Nik here with you on the Medical Legal Brief. We'll see you next time.
Yes, we're doctors. Yes, we're lawyers. No, this podcast is not medical or legal advice. Do not take anything we say as a reason to perform your own heart surgery, represent yourself in court, or diagnose your neighbor's rash. This is for entertainment only. Think of it like hanging out with your smartest, wittiest friends, not a substitute for an actual appointment. If you act on anything we say without talking to your own professional, that's on you. Seriously, don't do that.